We're studying Tractate Makkot. We are on page 6a, right on the top, in the beginning of the Gemara after the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah tell us? The Mishnah was giving us a series of laws regarding the laws of testimony. It's interesting that a lot of the laws of testimonies are based on related to conspiring witnesses, because there is a big section in the Torah, a big section, 4, 5, 6 psukim that's talking about that. And in those psukim, he mentions a whole bunch of laws that has to do with regular testimony. And then he adds in the conspiring witnesses part. So, what we said in the Mishnah is something very profound. And that is, we know that in Jewish law, testimony is only valid with two, especially when you're talking about dinei nefashot, when you're talking about capital punishment cases. You need two witnesses in order to accept testimony. And it's called a cut, it's called a set of witnesses. Now, what the Gemara is telling, what the Mishnah was teaching us, that there is a pasuk, that from that pasuk we learn that a set doesn't have to be only two, minimum is two, but it can be only three, also 3, and 4, and 5, and 100. And all of those sets have to be treated the same, meaning if something is wrong with the testimony of one, the whole set is out. If something has to be done with the witnesses, like conspiring witnesses, they all need to be conspiring witnesses. You can't just treat one separate than the other. So it's a whole set. So that's the essence of what the Mishnah is saying. So now in the Gemara, Amar Rava, v'hu she'idu kulam betoch kedei dibur. Rabbi is saying that how can we consider a set of 100 witnesses as one set and not 50 sets of 2 or whatever, some other multiple sets? It's when all of the witnesses gave their testimony betoch kedei dibur. What is betoch kedei dibur? Betoch kedei dibur is a period of time. Okay? Let's just talk for a second about betoch kedei dibur. Betoch kedei dibur is a period of time that is mentioned in the halakha as like a minimum, like very little. It's this day and age, actually in these days, it's very apropos because we just changed during Yom Tov from saying Mashiv HaRuach u'Morid HaGeshem to Morid HaTal, right? Now, meaning we're asking for rain in the winter, now we're asking for dew. Now, what happens if someone, by mistake, because, you say it every day, so it just gets into your muscle memory, and you say, Mashiv HaRuach u'Morid HaGeshem now, which is summer, officially summer, so you have to repeat the whole Shmoneh Esrei, right? You have to start from the beginning, unless you remember betoch kedei dibur. You said, Mashiv HaRuach u'Morid HaGeshem, Morid HaTal. Like in that, within seconds, within a short period of time, which is called betoch kedei dibur, as you were talking, you corrected it so you don't need to go all the way to the beginning. If you didn't, if you missed it, if you continued and said some other words, then, you can't really correct it. So that's the betoch kedei dibur is mentioned several times in different halachot, to signify that this is like the minimum amount of time that is still considered that you're in the same sentence, or you're in the same topic. Now, typically, betoch kedei dibur, as you were talking, is how do they translate it? Within the shortest phrase of speaking, whatever. So, betoch kedei dibur has to do with one person's doing something. You said, for example, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen, oy, borei minei mezonot, if you said it betoch kedei dibur, very quickly you can fix it and it's okay. Now, the issue is that it's when we're talking about myself, I can fix myself. I can do something betoch kedei dibur, and it accounts for my mind being within that topic, and it's just a misspoke or something. But here we have a chidush. Here we're saying that different witnesses has to give their testimony to the court betoch kedei dibur, meaning then one person finishes, the second one has to start right away. It's being done that way, so there is absolutely no opportunity to coordinate the testimony, So it's smooth. There is no time. If there is time, you know that there is a problem, and you don't accept it breaks the set. It breaks the set. So what's happening here is we're saying that all of the 100 witnesses had to testify betoch kedei dibur, has to do it all in one shot, in one continuation, and you can only differentiate between each one of them with a few seconds. We'll see how many seconds exactly. The betoch kedei dibur is a precise measurement, but we'll see in a second what it is. Anyway, so Rav Acha midifti from the city of Difti asked Mr. Rabina, mitoch kedei dibur echi dami, how does it mitoch kedei dibur echi dami? So he tells him, what does it mean betoch kedei dibur? It means the amount of time that it takes a student to greet their teacher. That is betoch kedei dibur. When you say, Shalom alecha mori v'rabi, hello, my master, my teacher, my master, that is as long as it takes you to say those 4 words. Some of them say Shalom alecha mori, that you have to say only 3 words. It's 3 or 4 words, but it's very quick. And if within that period of time if you pass more than that period of time, that's called a break. So he doesn't understand. What do you mean within those few words, which takes a second or less to say Shalom alecha mori? How long it takes? Barely a second. You expect 100 people to give their testimony? That's not. It's obviously not what the rabbis meant. It doesn't make sense. So he answered, no. It's not that they all have to say from beginning to end. 100 people have to give their testimony within this period of time. He says that when someone gives their testimony, they can talk as long as it takes them to give the testimony, half an hour or whatever. As soon as they finish, the next one has to start. And as soon as the second one finishes, the third one, and so on. Up to 100,000, whatever number of witnesses. They all need to sort of be strung together and say it one after the other, after the other, after the other. And then that makes them one set. So that is basically something that is applicable today. When witnesses are coming to the rabbis, to a court, to a beis din, they have to say their testimony right away. And if you break it, then it's not considered valid, or they're not considered connected. So you have 4 people, and 2 said it right away, and then the third one waited, la-di-da. So the third one and the fourth one are going to become a second set. And obviously the implications are, if you figure out that the first set was false witnesses, the second set still stands. And if they were considered one set, and one of the first 2 guys were considered false, gave false testimony, it invalidates the entire set, which includes 4. So it's very, very material whether we consider them 1 or 2 sets, or multiple sets. All right. Next. Rabbi Akiva omer lo bashlishi uma shnayim. So So Rabbi Akiva says as follows, that when you add the third one, the third, the fourth, the 1,100th witness, it makes it's to the benefit of, it's not to the benefit of the witnesses. It's not to ease the situation on the witnesses. It's to make it harder on the witnesses. So, and what does it mean? It means that it's hard for them to be witnesses. So if one of the extra witnesses is a bad witness, is a relative, turns out to be is a cousin of the accuser, they're out, the whole set is out, because you cannot have relatives included as witnesses. So that's what the Mishnah is saying in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Now we're going to go into a little bit of an interesting / bizarre set of discussions that hopefully will understand what they mean to say. But what always the rabbis are trying to do in the Gemara is to take the most extreme case, to basically figure out what the borders are, what is the limit of the halakha, of the halachic rule that we're discussing. So you're not taking mainstream, you're taking a very, very edge case, and if that edge case is included, so you go beyond that edge and try to find the edge. So this is a bunch of edge cases. So edge case number one, now, at this point, the Gemara is assuming that a witness to a case, to a crime, or to an event, is a witness whether they like it or not. As long as they saw it, they can be a witness. Later on, we will see that there is a different opinion, and a witness needs to mean to be a witness. It's not enough that they just, arrive at the scene or happens to walk in the street and saw a car accident, or saw something, or saw a crime, and they can come and test it. They needed to mean to see, to be witnesses. And we will talk about what that means, etc. So what happens if you have a set of witnesses? Let's say you have two witnesses that are good, okay? And if they come to court, everything will be fine. But if you have then there is a third witness which is not good. If that third witness is considered one of the group, one of the set, he can invalidate the two good ones. You don't just say, let's throw out the bad testimony and keep the other two. You throw out the whole thing if it's a set. So what happens when you have now the rules, the Jewish rule is as follows. If you know that there was a bad witness in the case, and the witness doesn't need to want to be a witness, so the Gemara is suspecting, so maybe it's a big problem, and that witness, even though he was there, unbeknown to the other two witnesses, or not coordinating with the other two witnesses, they can basically invalidate the whole testimony just by being there. So when there is a murder case, the murderer and the victim, the deceased, they're both considered sides in the case. Okay? So a murderer cannot come and testify. And a deceased obviously couldn't come and testify because they're dead. But had they been alive, they couldn't testify because they're part of the case. So that deceased, the person who was killed, was there and saw the killer, obviously. They saw the killer. So they were a witness to their death, to their own death. They were witnesses. And if there are two other witnesses standing on the side, and then come a murderer and sticks a knife in the person's gut, and then they saw it, the person saw it, and that person bleeds to death, and it takes, I don't know, 3 more, 10 more seconds till they're actually dead. So they actually saw the murderer, and they saw the act, and the guy died. So they were there. They were a witness. They were witness together with the 2 good witnesses, and they now, are we going to say that they're going to invalidate the testimony because they saw the killer? I mean, it's that's an extreme case, right? Which basically makes a lot of murder cases, you can't convict someone because any witnesses that will come, if the murderer, if the murderee saw his own death, so he joins with the other set, with the other two witnesses, it will invalidate their testimony as well. So what does it mean? So again, we're trying the edge case. So the Gemara is answering an interesting answer. At this point, we're going to reject all of that soon. But at this point, we're trying to just answer that particular question. So listen, yes, indeed, if the murderee, if the deceased saw the killer killing him, that will invalidate the testimony of the other 2 witnesses that saw it. But here we're talking about, how can you have somebody dying without seeing? When he came from behind, the murderer came from behind and struck him, and he couldn't see him. Or nowadays, it's a bullet from sharpshooter from afar. Not necessarily can see him. So that is how a murder case can be tried. That's what the Gemara is answering now. Okay, we'll put it aside for a second, and we'll go to another edge case, and we're going to go to we're going to go to one more, and then we'll reject this whole thing. So don't go home, scared that we don't have testimony in Jewish law anymore. So the next one is even more bizarre, and that is there is a law, a Jewish law, that homosexuality is not allowed. A man is not allowed to have sexual relationship with another man, and it's in Jewish law it's a capital punishment. Nowadays people will be banned from Facebook if they say it, but that's that's the Jewish law, and there's nothing we can do about it at the moment. So what happens when they have a sexual relationship? Obviously they see each other, right? So it's a capital punishment, and someone who is being, having this kind of relationship, how can you try him? They saw the person they had sex with, right? So the Gemara is answering, no, that's also, he came from behind. I'm telling you, it's bizarre. He came from behind, therefore, the person who had the sex, that had was with the back with the other guy. So the other guy saw, and he's obligated. He's in capital punishment. But the guy that he was done to, because he didn't see. So how can you try? So horeg verovea yatzilu. So he says, it sounds like a scenario that you can't refute. If you're saying that the law is that a witness is part of the case and part of the set, whether they like it or not, how are you going to answer those? It's hard to answer. Well, what is the technical answer to it? Because if that's the case, if that's the rule, they fall within the rule, and you lost, a lot of cases. So who was it? So Abaye didn't know what to say. Abaye didn't have an answer. So Ki'ata lekamei de Rava, when this story came in front of Rava, Rava was a very good friend of Abaye. They were same age, same family, related, I think. And they actually buried together in the near the city of Tzfat, in a very beautiful outlook. I mean, highly recommend if you want to go visit Abaye and Rava. It's an awesome trip. It's an awesome trip. And in the summer, it's very beautiful over there. There's nice breeze, Anyway, so when the same story came in front of Rava, what does he say? He said, listen, this doesn't make sense. Because the verse in the Torah that is mentioning the whole idea that three witnesses are like two and 100 witnesses are like two, that, the group of, how does the pasuk, what is the pasuk, what is the verse? The verse is saying it's simple. Al pi shtei edim or al pi shlosha edim yakum davar. That according to two witnesses or according to three witnesses, the situation, the issue is going to withstand. That is the verse. So he says, what does it mean yakum davar? Those are people that are withstanding the story, that are establishing the matter. They're not making the matter. They just testifying, they're establishing the truth of it. Yakum, they're propping it up. They're making sure that it's propped up. Not that they actually did it, but they're testifying, they're propping it up. So, therefore, all of those people who participated in the crime, whether it's victims or perpetrators, they're not, even though they saw it, they cannot be testifying. Because they're the thing itself. They're not the propers of the thing. So that is the answer. So rest assured, whatever we asked before, that extreme case didn't work, and therefore it was rejected. Any questions at this point? Okay.
Going back a little bit, before this last thing you talked about, with the witnesses, you have to go in a row, one after another, without any break. Was there any provision for separation? We call them sequestration of witnesses, so they don't hear each other testify?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So the whole event has to be done that way. And obviously, if they're in the other room and they need to walk, that does not invalidate their testimony. But it all needs to be in motion, Testify, the testimony ended, the person's taken out, another one is being brought in. You can't stop. Whether it doesn't make sense because they need to be sequestered, they cannot be standing. Sometimes they cannot be standing in front of the judges the same. You know what? I'm sorry. Let me take that back. The process it goes as follows. You take the two witnesses together and you ask them a bunch of questions. Then you split them and you ask them another bunch of questions to see if they're true witnesses. Once you establish their testimony separately and make sure that they are not false witnesses, then you bring them together into Beis Din, and they're standing in front of Beis Din together and they're saying it in a row. So the separation of the witnesses to check if they're truthful or not happened before. All right?
Yes.
Yes, Moshe. Your voice, your sound is not working. Your sound is not. No. You sound like a little girl, like Shirley Temple that had the cough or something. We don't hear you. I'm sorry. You can try again, call again, maybe. I don't know, but it's you can hear it, or you can write it. You can write it on the chat if you want. Write it on the chat. I'll see it. Anyway, all right. So if you want, you can write it. All right. So so the next story goes. Should we wait for Moshe to write the question? Yeah, why not? Let's see if Moshe types with one finger or with two. All right. If the witness's testimony is too perfect, then they're suspect of rehearsing. You saying it or you're asking it? You asking? You're saying it. Saying, yeah, okay, yeah. There is a lot of, that's true. And there is another thing that is true, that anything very perfect is, anything that seems wrong is wrong, okay? If you have a Beis Din of 71, right? The high Beis Din, the Supreme Court, right? And there is a case in front of the Beis Din, and every single one of the judges is saying the person is guilty. There is not even one that says that the person is not guilty. In that case, the person goes free. The person is being freed, because cannot be that there is no person in the world or no person in the Beis Din that is allowed, he couldn't find any side of schut, of merit to that guy. So, it goes exactly what you're saying, that, similar to what you were saying. And also at a wedding, the Eidim are named, okay, to the conclusion. Very good. Okay. This is something that we are going to mention, this whole thing with the witnesses, with the Edim. Just give us a few minutes and we'll mention it. Okay, it's something very, very fundamental. Good call, Moshe. Okay. אמר רב יוסי, במה דברים אמורים, ומה יעשו שני אחים, איך יאמרי לנו? Okay. So, Rabbi Yossi is saying that when, because we are saying that an additional witness is becoming a witness whether they like it or not, what should two brothers who saw a crime with a third person, that means that, they can't, the whole testimony is out. That's what Rabbi Yossi is basically saying. So how do we know, asks Rabbi Yossi, that the two brothers are both witnesses? Maybe one of them is not a witness and leaves the second brother to join with another person to be a valid set. So how do we know? So Rabbi's answer, we need to know, to examine who's real witness and who is not. When they come to Beis Din, one of the first questions that Beis Din is asking them is, when you came to witness that event, did you come to just see it, to observe it? If it was a proceedings of a loan or whatever, did you come to see it, or did you come to testify? If they answer that they came to testify, then even if it's two brothers, if one of them is a relative or has some other problem being a witness, then the whole testimony is thrown out. But if they said, we just came to see, we just heard with commotion and we went to the porch and we saw what we saw. So we didn't came to testify, we just came to see. So what, what would they do? When they see that someone killed? I mean, are you going to let the guy scot free? So what we see here is that basically we had two opinions. And opinion number one is of Rabbi Yossi. What we said now is that you don't need to ask anything, and if they're there, they saw it, and if that means that they invalidate the case, tough. And according to Rabbi, they need to mean at the time, they need to mean to be witnesses. Now, and this is where what you said, Moshe, comes into play. And this is why most of the poskim are going according to Rabbi, that the person who is a witness must mean to do it, and even more so, the people around him must be excluded, because otherwise we'll have very, very tough time getting married. Because in every single marriage, or most 99% of the marriages, you have relatives, okay? The father of the bride, the father of the groom, the grandfathers, the brothers, they're all there. and if they automatically become part of the set of the witnesses, then the marriage is not valid. So that's why they really making sure that to the exclusion of everyone, and everyone needs to hear it, because you can have some evil people who go to weddings and say, you know what, I'm going to be somebody who hates his brother or hates has some bone against his brother. They'll come and say, I'm going to think that I'm going to be a witness and I'm going to invalidate it, and then he's going to have a problem in his marriage. And I can see that happening, right? So it's not enough that they really mean to do it. They need to, the people around them. If it's a murder case, obviously you don't have to ask the victim, do you want to have us as testimony, the witnesses to your murder. But in a case of any monetary transaction or a wedding, you need to make sure that they agree. So that. Now we're finishing with Itmar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Halacha Rabbi Yossi V'lo Rav Nachman says Halacha Rabbi. So you have an halachic disagreement whether Rav Yossi says that a person automatically becomes a witness. Rabbi says that not. Most of the poskim are going according to Rav Nachman, that it's halacha kerabi, and therefore witnesses are not by default, are not automatic. That is the end of the Gemara. Any questions before we go into the next Mishnah, which is also very interesting? All right. So the next Mishnah is talking about multiple sets of witnesses that witnessed the same event from two different angles. So היו שניים רואים אותו מחלון זה ושניים רואים אותו מחלון זה, ואחד מטרה בו באמצע. בזמן שמקצתם רואים אלו יותר לו, הרי לו עדות אחת, ואם לאו הרי לו שתי עדויות. לפיכך אם נמצאת אחד מהם זוממת, הוא והן נהרגים והשנייה פטורה. Okay. So the story is as follows, that you have a murder in the middle of the street. And right there, right next to the murderer, you have a warner, a person who's warning the murderer not to do it. It can be any other capital punishment, but it's an easy one. It says, don't kill him, you're not allowed to kill. If you pull the trigger, you'll be executed as a murderer, you're not allowed to do it, stop. And the person does it anyway. Now you have two sets of witnesses. One are seeing the testimony from across the street from a window, and another one seeing from the other side of the street from another window. So if the two sets of witnesses or the person in the middle see both sides, so the person in the middle can see, has a straight angle to both windows, or the windows themselves, the two and two, see each other. Now it doesn't have to be that two of them see the other two. Even one of the two and one of the two is seeing either the person who is giving the warning, or they see one of the other witnesses in the other window. They are all becoming one set of witnesses, and you consider them as one. Now, if they don't, for example, one saw it from the 5th floor and one saw it from the 3rd floor, and there is a balcony and there is no way they can see each other, There's a balcony on the 4th floor. So they saw the same thing from window in the same building, or they didn't see each other. Then they are totally... the person who was warning did not see both of them. Then it's the separate witnesses, separate sets. So what happens if one of the sets of those witnesses, the people on the 3rd floor, or they saying that they're on the 3rd floor, turn out to be conspiring witnesses? They weren't on the 3rd floor; they're in Florida. So what do? So they're getting killed because they tried to frame someone. The murderer is getting killed because he has another kosher set from the 5th floor. So he's getting killed, and the set of people on the fifth floor. Nothing happened to them because they're good witnesses. So that's the situation in the Mishnah. Okay? Now, a second saying in the Mishnah, so that's one halacha. A second saying in the Mishnah, a second opinion in the Mishnah. So, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and soon we'll see which Rabbi Yossi. The opinion of Rabbi Yossi is saying, Le'olam en nehagim ad shiyu shnei edav matrim bo. We have the law that for capital punishment, before you cannot convict a capital punishment, infraction, unless there was a clear warning on the spot right before the deed. Who needs to give the warning? So the first opinion is anybody, anybody who is just can tell the person not to do it. That's a good warning. Rabbi Yossi is saying no, that the witnesses are the people who has to deliver the warning. And if the witnesses did not deliver the warning, they're not good witnesses, and therefore, you can't take them. You don't accept their testimony. Now, why is he saying that? He says because al pi shnayim edim yumat hamet. It says the pasuk over there says al pi shnayim edim or al pi shlosha edim yumat hamet, that the perpetrator is going to be killed, going to be punished with the death penalty, according to the two witnesses. So, according to Rabbi Yossi, the whole story, all of the conditions that get this person to the gallows, so to speak, or to be killed, with the stoning or whatever it is that the punishment is, has to be, all of the conditions has to be met and delivered by the witnesses. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. So, in case a person got a warning from someone else, and there are two good witnesses, they're not good anymore because according to him, they're not. It's not going to work. And a third, so that's one opinion. A second opinion, and a third thing that the Mishnah is mentioning is al pi shtayim edim shelo tiyeh Sanhedrin shomat mipi aturgeman. That al pi shnayim edim, that from the mouth of two witnesses, you need to you can decide the verdict. That means that the Beis Din, the Sanhedrin, the Beis Din, cannot hear it from a translator or interpreter. So they need to understand the language of the witnesses. So if you have two guys that are speaking in a foreign language and they show up to court, and what can you do? The rabbis don't speak, Korean or whatever the language is. They cannot accept this testimony because it needs to be from the mouth of the two witnesses and not via a translator. That is the Mishnah. Now, the Gemara, let's see where we are. The Gemara is saying something interesting. We were talking about if you have two sets of witnesses from two different windows, right? What happens if you have one witness in one window and another witness in another window? So are they considered one set or not? So, Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia Amar Rav, how do we know that edut miyuchedet? Edut miyuchedet is edut of ones, edut of individuals, of singles. A testimony of singles. How do you know that it's psula, that it's invalid? Shene'emar lo yumat al pi yed echad, that you should not, the end of that sentence, that you need to, you can apply capital punishment from the mouth of two witnesses. The end of that verse is lo yumat al pi yed echad, that you cannot kill someone based on the testimony of one, on the mouth of one witness. So what does it mean one? I mean, you can't say that you mean one, just one witness, because you just said that you need two. So what is the end of the pasuk telling you that it's not good to have one? The beginning of the pasuk is good enough. So what it tells you is that one that is alone, okay, it looks like one because he saw him alone, okay. So, meaning that it's a testimony of singles, testimony of individuals is not good. Even though the total number of witnesses is 2 or more, because they were not together, it's not acceptable. Tanya Namiachi, we have support to that notion from another Braita. לא יומת על פי יד אחד להביא 2 שרואים אותו. אחד מחלון זה ואחד מחלון זה, ואין רואים זה את זה שאין מצטרפים, ולא עוד אלא אפילו בזה אחר זה, בחלון אחד אין מצטרפים. So we have a second Braita, and the second Braita is stating a similar situation, stating 2 cases. Case number 1 is the case that we were talking about, that you have 2 people, one from one window, one from another window, and they don't see each other. They cannot join into a set of valid witnesses. But what happens if you have 2 people, they're in the same room. One of them, but it's a small window. They have a peephole, whatever. They're standing in front of the door, and there is, the peephole in the door. And one looks and sees a crime, and then they move, and another person put their eyes and see the end of the crime. So it's 2 witnesses, they saw the same crime, but they didn't saw the same crime from beginning to end together. One saw half of the crime, another one saw the other. So that's not good. That's not good. So Amar Le'abai, Rav Papa Le'abai is asking, if you have a situation where you have 2 witnesses, and each one from different windows saw the entire crime from beginning to end, and you say that that's not good, they don't join together to form a valid set of witnesses. For sure, if you have 2 people who each one saw half of the event, that you cannot join them to as full witnesses. What are you telling me here? What is the new? Why are you bringing the second case? The second case seems to be weaker than the first case. Why are you bringing it? So he said, no, it's not so. We're talking about a crime. When you're talking about a murder happens in a moment. It's a moment in time. A gun, poof, you see. So, you either saw it or you didn't see it. You saw half of it, you can't, it's very hard to really make that considered that each one saw, that both of them saw the event. But you have other capital punishments that takes time. For example, if someone is having a forbidden sexual relationship, if someone is having a sexual relationship with another man's wife, or with his daughter-in-law, with the wife of his second wife of his father, there are a list of relationships that are not correct, that are not right. Now, what happens when that happens? That kind of act can take time, can take a few minutes, and it's very possible that someone will see the first minute, another one will see the second minute, and and you don't need to see the entire 2 minutes to know that's to create the crime. The crime is the first second, and the second second, and the third second. It's all individual crimes. They're all enough to convict the person. So that's why he mentioned that if you have 2 witnesses and one of them saw half of the crime and another one saw another half of the crime, it's the same crime and they saw each other, but they didn't see the exact event at the same moment, they're not good witnesses. And that is what the Gemara is saying here. And let me just see. We have several other details which will take some time to unpack, so we'll continue next time. All right?